What's up, YouTube? This is Roshni here. Let's talk a little bit about diabetes. I keep getting clients on a regular basis who have been diagnosed with diabetes, or doctors have told them to cut down on carbs and cut down on sugar and cut down on fruits and cut down on everything basically. Um, and I sometimes it's very heartbreaking to see people going off whole food, fruits, carbs, rice, all of these things because they feel they need to control sugar to get diabetes under control, which is just part of the problem, which is part of the solution, but it is not the full solution. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, let's do like a diabetes 101 for dummies. What exactly is diabetes? Diabetes basically is the inability of your hormone insulin to work properly. Now, depending on what exactly is wrong with insulin, there could be two types of diabetes. I have this diagram behind, but turns out I do not understand my camera enough to focus the diagram and me. So you'll see a screen somewhere down here with the diagram. There's two types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is when your body is not able to produce enough insulin. Now, every time you eat or drink something, the food is broken down into glucose, and the glucose is used up as a source of energy by your body, and all the excess glucose is converted into glycogen, something called glycogen, and stored in your liver and your muscles. Now, the hormone responsible for converting the glucose to glycogen, which is very, very important, is insulin. So, when you have diabetes, you have a problem with insulin. People with type 1 diabetes, the hormone insulin is not produced enough by the pancreas. So, suppose someone's insulin production for a healthy person is 100%. Even if your insulin production is up to 70-80%, that's good. But if it's any less than that, then your body's inability to produce enough insulin, meaning there'll be excess glucose in the blood and it won't be converted to glycogen, and that's what type 1 diabetes is. Type 2 diabetes is when your body is producing enough insulin but your cells are not able to absorb that. So insulin is not, basically there's an insulin resistance by your own body, and your body is not able to use up the insulin even though it's produced. And what doctors mostly, or what a lot of people mostly recommend is, because you don't want all that blood sugar flowing in your blood vessels, you want it either to be used up as energy, which is glucose, or to be converted to glycogen. And what a lot of doctors and the whole medical industry tries to control when you have diabetes is, do not consume excess food, or do not consume food which will give a rise in your blood sugar, which is kind of true. That means carbs, a lot of carbohydrates, simple carbs like table sugar and rice and everything which has very, very high glycemic index, or anything you consume which instantly gets converted to blood sugar. Your doctors are going to try and control what you put in your mouth, which is true, just part of the problem. But the main problem, what happens is, people with diabetes, their blood vessels, their arteries and veins are clogged up. If you look at a healthy person's blood vessel, this is how it looks. Refer to the small screen down. And if you look at someone with diabetes, your blood vessels are clogged up with fat cells or fatty acids. So the blood flowing through that, this is the diameter of your blood vessel. This is going to look very awkward. And it's clogged up with fatty acids and fat cells. Now, because of all the deposition of excess fat around your blood vessels, the blood sugar is not, even though there's a conversion, the glucose is not able to get converted to glycogen because of the excess deposition of fat cells. So your main concern right now, if you are someone who is going through diabetes, or you know someone who's going through diabetes, is to clear up the clogging of your blood vessels, is to actually remove the fat cells and clean it up basically. And there's two ways you do this. So the solution to people with diabetes should not be every kind of medication you're taking. If you're taking medication for diabetes, or you're taking insulin injections, or any kind of thing you're looking in terms of solution, it's not a cure, it's like a prevention. But if you want a cure, the cure to diabetes, and trust me, type 2 diabetes, where your body is producing enough insulin but your body is not able to utilize the insulin, is 100% curable, and it's curable through a plant-based diet. When you're going to clean up those blood cells, you're going to clean up your blood vessels, remove the fat deposition, and utilize, and then your body is going to be much more capable at converting the excess glucose into glycogen. So number one thing you need to do to clean up those blood cells is increase your fiber intake, your insoluble fiber intake. Fiber is basically a compound which is not digested by the body. But think of fibers, you're going to get your fiber from anything plant-based, anything animal, any kind of animal product, meat, eggs, any kind of animal product has zero fiber, has no fiber. And your per day fiber intake needs to be about 25 to 35 grams, depending if you're a male or female. Minimum fiber intake needs to be about 25 to 35 grams or upwards from there, but not less than that. And if you're going to start measuring your fiber intake, you start realizing that you do not even consume close to 15 grams of fiber. Now when I talk to people about fiber and I ask them, how much do you think your fiber intake is, and they say, oh, I think my fiber intake is pretty high because I start my day with a bowl of oats and fruits on top of that. If you look at a bowl of oats, half a bowl of oats just has about 4 grams of fiber, just 4 grams. And if you're not getting your serving of about 5 vegetables a day and 2 or 3 fruits a day, you are not meeting your fiber requirements. And you think you're meeting your fiber requirements, you're not meeting your fiber requirements. In fact, when you look at a vegan or vegetarian diet, or any kind of diet really in the world, the concern is not about protein intake. We are getting enough protein, and you don't have people being diagnosed with protein deficiency. I mean, how many people do you know? Think about it. Like what? No one diagnosed or died of protein deficiency. They would have died of a caloric deficiency in third world countries where overall calories is low, and then there's not enough food. So you have starvation, but that no one dies of protein deficiency. But a lot of people have been diagnosed with the side effects of fiber deficiency, like irritable bowel syndrome, or you're just constipated, or your digestion is bad, and even diabetes being one of them, where not enough fiber is there to clean up your blood vessels. So I'm not saying that if you are on diabetic medication, give up the medication and just start eating a plant-based diet and which is high in fiber. No, but eventually your diet should reflect, and eventually I have clients, trust me, who've been taking medication for diabetes, and we've gradually over time reduced the dose and even got them off medication by just a plant-based diet. Clearing up the clogged arteries is one of them. And second thing is to reduce your fat intake. You should not be reducing or concentrate. I mean, of course, if you're diagnosed with diabetes, you're insulin dependent right now, and you have been following a certain diet, don't go overnight and shift. But carbs is not the main problem here. It's the fat and the deposition of fat, and you need to monitor your fat intake, and your fat mainly comes from dairy and meat. So if you are someone with diabetes, then over time you should start looking at reducing your fat intake. And if you're going to cut down on your fat, you're going to have to replace it with proteins and carbs. And a plant-based whole food proteins and carbs is not going to lead to a spike in blood insulin, but the deposition of fat in your arteries and veins eventually, apart from diabetes, will lead to hypertension and even heart attack. So what you should be doing, if you are someone who's been diagnosed, or someone who's been diagnosed with diabetes, start gradually and talk to your doctor about it, talk to your medical expert about it. And I'll also leave links to a couple of books you should be reading if you've been diagnosed with diabetes, or someone, which will give you, because this video is it's like a 5-10 minute video. I cannot give a lot of information over here, but I'm going to try and give as much as possible. To up your fiber intake, 4 to 5 servings of fruits a day, and 4 to 5 servings of vegetables a day, and 2 to 3 servings of fruits per day, and start gradually over time reducing your fat intake, even if you don't do anything about your carb intake. Any kind of carbohydrates which you are consuming also when you are diabetic, you need to remember, comes from whole food sources. And when I say whole food, I mean use the whole grain. I've said this in my videos a lot of times, I've said this in my talks a lot of times before. Do not break the grain down and make it into flour and then make breads or flatbreads out of it. You need to be using the whole food. That's why rice versus flatbread all the time, because rice is still the whole grain and the whole food. I mean, there's just so much information in general out there in the media that it could be contradicting and confusing. Um, so I suggest one do your research. Like, I'll give you an example. I was just reading a book recently called The Water Solution, in which he talks about how olive oil is the best thing, virgin olive oil is the best thing out there, and you should be using only virgin olive oil for your cooking and sprinkling and salads, which is true. It's part true. But what happens when I am reading the book as an Indian, and if you look at a lot of Indian cooking, you're gonna use your oils at the beginning of whatever you're stir frying. So you're gonna heat up the stove and then put oil, and then you add all the spices and vegetables and lentils and whatever you have to add. So the oil is going to stay on the flame the longest, and olive oil has a very very high heating temperature, meaning olive oil, when heated above a certain temperature, goes rancid and is actually poisonous for the body. It's excellent and exceptionally good to cook olive oil when you're sprinkling it. Like, suppose you're having a salad or something and then you want to sprinkle it on top where you're not heating it. But if you look at it in terms of cooking methods, then olive oil is not the best because of its heating temperature being so high, and it just becomes rancid once it goes over a certain temperature. So I mean, when we take messages from the media, and it gives us the part truth, and unless you go deep into it, the same thing with diabetes. You're trying to control sugar, you're trying to control carbohydrates, you're trying to control what is going in your mouth and what you're putting in your mouth, but really you should be concentrating on what is the cure and not the prevention. You're trying to get your blood glucose level under control as much as you can, but really you need to start thinking about why the glucose is not converted to glycogen and what steps you need to start taking to convert the glucose into glycogen. So that's just a little bit of basics in terms of diabetes. I mean, I'm just coming across a lot of people and a lot of misguided information. Like, I was sitting with a friend yesterday who was talking about being diagnosed with diabetes and following a diet. And when I spoke to her and I was like, what kind of diet are you following? And she said, oh, I'm just trying to control I don't take sugar with my tea, and I don't take sugar with this, and I'm cutting down on my fruits, and I'm not doing this. I'm like, okay, fine, so how much fat are you consuming? She's like, what do you mean fat? I'm not consuming a lot of fat. And we just did a quick MFP entry of what she had eaten the entire day. I think we met in the evening, so what she had eaten the entire day up till evening. And turns out 40% of her calories were coming from fat when she thought she was following a diet. So, and you don't know, it adds up, like a glass of milk has about 80% fat. If you look at it, it has a lot of fat. But from fat, it's hormonated, it has a lot of, blood cells, pus cells, oxytocin. It has everything which you do not need and which is actually causing to your problem. So when you think you might be following a diet, part truth is we've only been told stop sugar when you have diabetes and stop carbs, but that's just one part of the story, and no one talks about fat depositions, and no one talks about how fat could be a reason why, fat could be a reason why your body is not capable, is not utilizing the insulin and converting it into glycogen. So yeah, everything we hear in the media in general, we just hear part truths about this and that. And I think we should go a little bit deep in terms of understanding or work with someone who knows, this kind of thing. So if you go to a doctor who, I was just reading, if you haven't watched the documentary What the Health, you guys should watch it. It's so beautiful. It's on Netflix right now. I think all over the world. It's worldwide. I think it's worldwide, but it's on Netflix India. I'll leave a link in the description below, where he talks about who do you think sponsors the American Diabetes Association or American Heart Association. Let's just talk about diabetes. Who do you think sponsors the American Diabetes Association? And if you go deep into it, or just a simple Google research, American Diabetes Association sponsor, they've been sponsored by very big names in the industry. I don't know if I can say that on YouTube. I don't know. Just watch the documentary What the Health, and you get a lot of information from there. But who do you think decides what goes in your plate when you're diabetic? Who do you think makes the diet chart? Think about it. Think about a lot of things, just going on in general, and how much you're influenced by the media and how much you're influenced by what we see on TV and what kind of messages we are seeing around us, and how our decisions to take actions are influenced by the pharmaceutical industries and the, just major brands, big brands out there. Okay, so that's what I had on diabetes. I know it's a very short video for me to cover a lot of things, and I tried to keep it in as many layman's term as possible. But basically, I at least hope I started you guys thinking about it, in terms of what way your diet should be skewed towards when you've been diagnosed, or someone who's been diagnosed with diabetes. Give this video a big thumbs up if you liked it. Leave a comment below. I am getting better with every video, so subscribe to my channel, so you're updated with videos in the future, and tag a friend here or share this with a friend who might find this beneficial. Cheers guys, have a good day. Bye.